on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 6.
Good evening, I'm Zora Suleiman. The Tory MP who reportedly watched porn in the House of Commons has been named as Neil Parish. The MP for Tiverton and Honiton in Devon has now had the Conservative whip suspended while he's investigated by the party. Some breaking news in the last few minutes. Another member of the ISIS cell, known as the Beatles, has been jailed for life in the US. British man Alexander Amicoti was known as Jihadi Ringo and was found guilty for his role in the hostage-taking and killings of journalists and aid workers. Three-time Wimbledon champion Boris Becker has been jailed for 2.5 years. Earlier this month, he was found guilty of flouting terms of his 2017 bankruptcy. He was accused of hiding millions of pounds worth of assets, including 2 Wimbledon trophies, to avoid paying his debts. 2 British aid workers reportedly captured by Russian forces in Ukraine have been named. The UK non-profit organisation Presidium Network confirmed Dylan Healy and Paul Urey as the 2 men who it's thought were captured in the southeast of the country on Monday. The charity urged Russia to comply with international law.
These are humanitarian workers, they're volunteers not working with any agenda or with anyone, and they're not spies or connected to the military, and just basically treat them as humanitarian workers under international law.
Meanwhile, another British fighter who has been captured in Ukraine has appeared on Russian state TV. Andrew Hill said he had been shot and that he had begged to go to hospital. He can be seen with his arm in a sling and bandages on his head. He is the 3rd British fighter to have been captured and interviewed on screen. It comes as a Ukrainian journalist has been killed after a series of airstrikes in the capital, Kyiv. Vera Heinrich worked for US-backed broadcaster Radio Liberty. Her body was found among rubble of her residential building. And Airbnb say staff will be able to work from anywhere they want in the world without seeing their pay affected. That means they won't see their salaries docked if they move out of cities or places with higher costs of living. Those are the latest news headlines. Still to come, your TalkSport update. But first, your weather.
Times Travel sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello, I'm Nazanin Gaffer. Well, a lot of the UK has been bathed in sunshine today and therefore temperatures have been high. It's been feeling pleasantly mild, but not everywhere. There's been pesky cloud around, mainly across eastern parts of England, as you can see from the satellite and radar earlier, and that's really affected the temperatures across parts of the east and southeast of England throughout today. But it has been mostly dry and it's going to turn wet as we head into the bank holiday weekend. In fact, from tonight, we'll see a front approaching northwestern parts of the UK, bringing spells of rain to the northwest of Scotland and Northern Ireland and the Republic by dawn. Elsewhere, it will be mainly clear and chilly, particularly across central parts of England, where a touch of frost is likely as well. So for the bank holiday weekend, England and Wales looking mostly fine. A brighter day across eastern parts of England expected, and it will be very mild as well. Temperatures up to around 17 or 18 degrees Celsius, but cool and wet with spells of rain that will be heavy at times across Scotland, Northern Ireland and the Republic into northwest England. For Sunday, rain patchy across England and Wales, sunshine and showers on bank holiday Monday. And finally, a gust-nado whirlwind was spotted swirling near the tarmac outside Denver International Airport a couple of days ago, causing a ground stop and delay in flights. It was due to a severe thunderstorm in the area that caused considerable blowing dust and rapidly reduced visibility as well.
Trust us to take you there. Times Travel sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello again. A consortium led by LA Dodgers part owner Todd Boehly is reportedly now the preferred bidder for Chelsea Football Club. It's understood a £3 billion bid has gone in 2 weeks after the official deadline. It comes as earlier British billionaire Sir Jim Ratcliffe put in a £4 billion bid for the club. Manchester United interim boss Ralf Rangnick has been confirmed as the new head coach of national side Austria, but he will still take on a consultancy role at United as planned at the end of the season. He says his main priority is to ensure top talents don't join other top clubs.
It's not only about identifying those players, it's also then about meeting them, convincing them to join this club, even though we will not be playing in the Champions League.
West Ham say they've identified 2 offenders who allegedly attacked German commentators during last night's 2-1 defeat to Eintracht Frankfurt. They reportedly had their headphones ripped off and thrown on the floor of the London stadium. The club says it takes a zero-tolerance approach to the incident and that if found guilty, those responsible will face a lifetime ban. That's all for now. I'll be back with more in half an hour.
I'm James Mack.
Good afternoon. It is 6:06. It's Talk TV live from Talk Radio studio here in the heart of London. But now it's time to jump over the pond to speak to John Christopher Bua, JC, our very own professor. Prof. JC, how are we doing this week?
Well, I'm delighted to make my debut on Talk TV with you.
Well, it's a beautiful thing, and may I say, interrupting you as ever, you're looking especially resplendent. Now, we have to get to the serious dive into the serious things going on. The NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg said that the war in Ukraine could go on for years, just as President Biden asked Congress for $33 billion in a Ukraine aid package. What is that aid package, and what difference do you think it's going to make to stop Putin and his aims?
Well, nothing will really stop Putin because he was not democratically elected. So he really has no constituents like your prime minister, or look what happened in Macron in France, in Germany. These individuals were democratically elected, and their constituents will hold their feet to the fire. Putin, being a thug and a dictator, doesn't have that. However, I think the American people are getting so disgusted and frightened and disillusioned with what's going on in Ukraine that President Biden basically put his foot down yesterday. I was there at the White House, and he made a commitment. He is going to Congress to request, as you said, $33 billion in aid for Ukraine. And it includes $20.4 billion for military assistance, $8.5 billion for economic assistance, and for help the government, $3 billion for humanitarian assistance, and $500 million for domestic food production. You know, they're the breadbasket of Europe. And this is what this country is saying. He's going to the Congress, which is both Democrat and Republican, and I think they're going to come around. Unfortunately, it takes weeks for this legislation to go through, so there's going to be some lag time, Rob.
Now, bearing in mind the economic troubles and woes, high inflation, and a number of constituencies across, especially the Midwestern part of America, are really suffering. To what extent is there an appetite to pass yet another bill, $33 billion, to go to a country that, frankly, many Americans, especially in the heartlands, have been, disengaged with, understandably, not really understanding why this matters to them?
Well, a lot of people don't care. Marjorie Taylor Greene was saying that, why should we give this money to Nazis? And she was called out on that one. This is the hard right and the MAGA people and the Trump patrons, or what do you want to call them, who deify him. They are against supporting anything but their own ridiculous legislation that now there are states now are prohibiting abortion, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. And this kind of anger, this kind of hatred, this kind of nasty, I call it Christo-fascism, if you will, is getting hold of the GOP, the grand old party, so to speak. I wouldn't recognize this party, and frankly, neither would Richard Nixon.
Yeah, and I suspect Ronald Reagan and certainly Bush Sr. perhaps as well. I have to say,
definitely Bush Sr.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. One thinks about the various notes he wrote as a quite noble president, to say the least. But I want to come back to this $80.4 billion that looks like it's going to pass Congress and end up in military aid in Ukraine. Now, to what extent do you think that this represents an escalation, or at the very least, a provocation in terms of keeping the war going rather than forcing people to the table?
Well, when you look, and you've been close at hand, Rob, and I've followed your travels to that part of the world, and I have to say, Mariupol doesn't exist. Right. These cities are gone. I mean, it's worse than I've ever seen, and worse than most people have ever seen. How can you bring a thug to a table and have a negotiation to do what? Build back these cities, to bring back the young girls who were raped and the young boys who are going home in ashes because Putin has designed the idea of crematoria out in country, so the mothers couldn't see the soldiers coming back dead. And Putin has a big Red Square event on May 9th. This glory of the former glory of the Soviet Union. What does he have to show for it? Not much. So we have a choice. We have no choice. Putin needs to be stopped. And how we do that is an effort the U.S. and NATO, Great Britain, must come to grips with.
Right. Prof. JC, I'm going to change the subject a little bit, pivot. I watch, as a junkie of American cable news, I watch both sides. I'll watch Fox from time to time and watch MSNBC, often just, frankly, to be impressed, even when I disagree, at the quality of some, and I emphasize that word, of the broadcasting. And again, I emphasize often where I disagree. Rachel Maddow last night on MSNBC did an extraordinary monologue talking about, if you like, unpicking the way in which right, especially GOP, so let's call it what it is, people understand, far right or right-wing Republican politics seems to be operating right now, which is to take a small issue, make people afraid of it, galvanize its base, and then win elections on it. So, for example, issues involving perhaps trans rights where there might be one person and so on and so forth, that gets escalated and becomes the kind of central feature of an election, and you can win on that. To what extent do you think she was right, and do you think that represents an incurable, and I emphasize that word, malignancy in the American political landscape?
It's what they're doing, what the extreme right is doing, is using fear as a motivation. Fear, if your children are taught about slavery, that they will become liberal queers, so to speak. I use that term liberally. Or they will, if they learn about perhaps a child who's got two dads or two moms, they're going to become gay and homosexual. This is what they're pushing with this critical race theory and this anti-progressive. The more steps we take forward, Rob, and it's always happened this way, the reaction is even more retrograde.
Yeah, we may disagree on that, as you know. CRT has been pretty much outlawed. Kemi Badenoch, when she was the education minister, made a very powerful speech in Parliament, which is worth listening to. She's a woman of colour that really talked about, and my phrase, not her, the violence that it did to Martin Luther King's mission, which was about evaluating people by virtue of their their character, not the color of their skin. Now, we don't have time to solve that problem. Just wanted to pick you up on something you said earlier, which is about states in America now banning abortion outright. It's very important because the Supreme Court has not yet ruled on the critical case it had in front of it, which does look like, and I listened to the full argument, that it is going to overturn Roe v. Wade and also the case of Casey, which followed that. If that happens, what does that mean for abortion rights across America?
Well, it would be decimated, number one. You'd have to worry about your daughter and your granddaughter, and you'd have to worry. Now, the states that are already putting these draconian rules in there, they're ready for it. They're using this as an open door. Oh, Roe v. Wade's going to be gone. We might as well start it now. And they're using it for political purposes. They think they're going to defeat the liberal Joe Biden, who's not terribly liberal, and they're going to come back to a very conservative, anti-Catholic, by the way. Marjorie Taylor Greene went against the Catholic Church the other day and said they were a bunch of pedophiles. I mean, it's not pleasant here, Rob. I wish I was with you for a little bit for a break, because it's not a good atmosphere. But we have to deal with it. We've got 5 months left before the November elections, and that means all of the House of Representatives and a third of the Senate is up. The Supreme Court is likely to overthrow Roe, and no exceptions, except maybe for rape and incest. But many of these states don't care if, I don't want to get graphic, but if a young girl was made pregnant by her father, they say it's okay because the life is the most important thing.
I have to say, having listened to the Supreme Court arguments, my instinct is that they're very troubled by stare decisis. In other words, the impact of overturning what may not be a super precedent, but certainly Casey. And I advise anybody to do that. Listen to, read the judgment of Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman appointed to the Supreme Court justice, as she defended Roe, which was about the integrity of the Supreme Court. It's a brilliantly written judgment. Now, lastly, but not leastly, Dr. Fauci, who's still on the American scene, announced that COVID is no longer a pandemic. What happened that I wasn't aware of, Prof. JC?
I have no idea. I've known Fauci for over 20 years. He was always came on as a guest when I worked for another network, and he's not far from me. And I wear a mask if I'm in a crowd. I'm going down to Florida for a few events. Right. We won't get into that, but with my wife, and we're driving. I'm not getting on a plane or going to an airport. That sounds terrible, but I don't trust it. And nobody knows, including Dr. Fauci. I have respect for him. The CDC is sending out mixed messages. Right. So my advice is use your own judgment. Be careful. Get your vaccinated. Get your boosters and wear a mask whenever you come in contact with people, especially in a closed space. And we have a White House Correspondents' Dinner happening tomorrow night with 2,600 people. And Joe Biden is going. And I usually go, but I won't be around. He's going to be speaking, and then he's taking the exit out. And usually when the presidents come, they stick around, hobnob a bit. Of course, Trump didn't come.
But that won't be happening tomorrow at the White House Correspondents'. I have to say, I'm looking forward to seeing who the comedian is this week. Always interesting and fun to watch. It was more fun when Trump stopped going. I have to say, as ever, informative, interesting. You may not agree with what he says, but he says it very well. It's our own Prof. JC, live from across the pond. This is Talk TV Live from the Talk Radio studio here in the heart of London.